Welcome to Satsang. I love the extended monsoon that still has it raining as Navaratri is about to begin. I don't love that it's a symbol and symptom of climate change, but if we could somehow pull it out of the whole climate change equation and have just the beautiful rain, it's wonderful. If it does start to come down a little too hard for you guys, we can always make extra room here, don't worry. Yes. It's good they came prepared with umbrellas. So, as you know, we usually start with a question in advance, and usually they come in from online. But today, as I was just walking into satsang, someone handed me this because, of course, sometimes we feel shy to raise our hand and ask the question. So we'll start with his. I have some bad habits which must be stopped. I tried many times to refrain from these, but I failed. So my question is how to control those bad habits. I think a lot of the time about these, but when the time of action comes, I cannot be able to do it. Please give suggestions on this issue. I imagine that if I said to all of you, does anyone here have a habit that you would like to stop? That most of us would raise our hands. Or we could flip it around and say, does anyone have a positive habit that they would really like to implement in their lives, but haven't yet been able to really get it to become a habit? Anything ranging from a beautiful meditation practice to flossing your teeth, right? I mean, how many things are there that we would love to make an absolute, unquestionable part of our day, but things happen. And similarly with the bad habits that we'd like to be free of, this is really common. It's not something to feel ashamed of at all. Here are the keys. The way that our brain functions is actually very mechanical most of the time. The overwhelming majority of what happens in our brain happens automatically. Now, some of that is just which makes our body go. We're breathing, we're digesting, we're able to hold our bodies erect. But then there's a lot of the automatic things that have become automatic in our lives. So people bite their fingernails or crack their knuckles or twirl their hair, or, people have all kinds of habits that they're just unconscious of. It's not that they're always aware, oh, right now I'm biting my fingernail or I'm twirling my hair. It's become unconscious. Similarly, it happens to a lot of us emotionally. Maybe that bad habit is getting angry, yelling, having temper tantrums. Anybody out there, again, who's getting wet and who doesn't want to be getting wet, feel free to come in. We can always, if you're happy getting wet, no problem, but just to let you know that we'll always scoot in. There's no Hindi translation for there's no room. There's always room in India. So, yeah, I've never been in a place where no matter how packed it looks, you can't actually squeeze more people in. So sometimes those bad habits are emotional habits. We get angry. We don't want to, but we do. Before we even know what's happened, we are throwing a temper tantrum, or we're yelling. Maybe we're even hitting. The very first most important thing to do is become conscious. Because all of these habits happen when we are unconscious. I can't stop biting my fingernails or twirling my hair if I'm not aware when I'm doing it. I have to first become aware. And similarly, in terms of the tone of my voice, terms of my action, if I'm aware while I'm doing it, fully aware, whether it's drinking alcohol, taking drugs, yelling, whatever the habit may be, as long as I'm unconsciously doing it, on autopilot, I don't stand a chance. I have to bring in consciousness. And what that means is that in our lives, we have to practice being aware. It's one of the great gifts that meditation gives us, right? When we meditate, it sounds very simple. Be aware of your breath. You'd think, what's the big deal? Why is that so complex? Well, first of all, it's very hard to maintain for more than about 30 seconds at a time without the mind wandering. But as you develop the skill of being able to watch that breath without the mind wandering, of being in that mindful moment, it actually retrains your brain. That which we gain in meditation is not gone when we stand up from meditation. It stays with us. As it changes our brain, we change. So meditation teaches us to be aware, conscious. And that's the first step. The second step is, what a lot of people do is they make very big resolutions. So, say I normally get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Then I decide from tomorrow I'm going to get up at 4. It's unlikely. It's unlikely that that's going to work. Now, there are some people, and especially if you go into a meditation retreat where there's a bell and everybody's got to get up. But on your own, it's very difficult to drag a body out of bed that's used to getting up at 9 at 4. And the dilemma is actually very deep here, because if I make a commitment, I'm going to get up at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I don't, I go back to sleep, then what happens is my whole sense of self, maybe you could just pull that out of the wall over there. They forgot to unplug it today. Thank you so much. Yeah, just out of the wall. No, not there. You see it plugs into the wall? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Usually they remember to get that unplugged. But so if I make a commitment and then I don't do it, well, I've lost the opportunity to meditate, to have a new good habit. But something actually much more detrimental has also happened, which is I've taught myself I am not someone who does what I say I'm going to do. And that identification is actually much more harmful for me than not meditating for a day. Because now, the moment that I make any kind of resolution, my mind says, yeah, but I don't do them. Yeah, I keep committing, but I don't do it. I keep saying I'm going to stop, but I don't. And suddenly I become, in my own self-identification, someone who doesn't do what I commit to doing. And so whether it's stopping a habit or starting a habit, either way, bite off a chunk that you can chew. It may not be easy. Challenge yourself. We're all up to the challenge. But bite off a chunk that's manageable. You get up at 9 every day? Okay, start setting the alarm at 8. Don't try to go from 9 to 4. Set it at 8. Do that for a few weeks or a month. Then set it for 7. Do that for another few weeks or a month. Then slowly, slowly. And the benefit of that is that suddenly in your mind you become someone who does what you commit to doing. If you are used to eating dessert with every single meal, you're used to having snacks, candy as snacks and dessert as every meal, and suddenly you say no more sugar. Well, again, it's really unlikely that unless a doctor has said you've got such bad diabetes you're going to die, that you're actually going to follow it. Instead, just stop having dessert with dinner. Keep doing everything else the same. Stop your dessert with dinner. Do that for a few weeks. Then stop your lunch dessert. Do that for another few weeks or a month. Then stop the mid-afternoon candy bar. Do that another few weeks or a month. Slowly, slowly, such that at the end of several months, now you don't even need sugar in your tea. But you didn't do it all at once. So that's a really important part. And one good way of making sure that you follow up is telling people you're going to do it. There's a very powerful psychological component about a publicly made resolution. I'm much more likely to cheat on my diet if no one knows I'm on a diet. I'm much more likely to keep smoking even though I vowed to quit if no one knows I vowed to quit. But if I've publicly stated, as of tomorrow, I am not smoking, well, the sheer sense of my own self-respect, right? I don't want people to say, you're the loser who couldn't do what you said. So due to my own self-respect, I'm much more likely to keep it. So state your intentions publicly. And not everything necessarily deserves to be on social media. Sometimes things are private. But be sure that you tell at least a few people. People whose opinion of you respect and matter. Somebody who you really respect, tell them, I've made a decision. This is what I'm going to do. And every day, I'm going to send you a note. Sometimes people come into satsang and they vow, I'm going to start meditating. Or I'm going to stop shouting at people or, any kind of bad habit. And I always say, message me every day. Just send me a message every day. Every day you meditate, message me. Every day you made it through the day not shouting at someone, message me. Because it gives them that sense that someone's watching and paying attention. So those are some tips to do it. But what we know about the brain, as I began, is it functions mostly in many ways like an autopilot machine, which means that the first few weeks or months are going to be much more difficult. once it becomes a habit, like I remember when I gave up sugar. I was never a huge sugar eater, but I had sugar in my tea, I had sugar in my milk. And it's not that I never touch it, but I've pretty much stopped eating it. And in the beginning it was difficult. But then as the years have gone by, it's become so much just a part of who I am that, you know, there could be a bowl of M&Ms sitting on my coffee table where people come and sit for weeks, and it just never would even occur to me to eat one. But it takes a while for the whole chemistry of the body to recalibrate and not keep craving things. So give yourself some time. And if your habit is not something that's chemically related, but just action related, know that the more times you do an action, the more likely you are to do an action. It's a sanskara, it's an impression. The more times I throw a temper tantrum, the more likely I am to throw a temper tantrum. The more times I smoke a cigarette after a meal, the more likely I am to smoke a cigarette after a meal. It's the way that the brain works. But similarly, the more times I floss my teeth before I go to sleep, the more likely I am to floss my teeth before I go to sleep. It becomes a habit. But you've got to give yourself those weeks. There's arguments among different camps. I've heard 14 days, I've heard 21 days, I've heard 28 days. But everyone agrees it's a matter of a couple of weeks. It's not a matter of years. And it just rewires our habits. So just make a commitment. Bite off a chewable chunk. Tell people you're going to do it. And then do it. Not just because of the habit, but so that when you think about yourself, you know, I'm someone who does what I say. I'm someone who follows through. I'm someone who keeps my commitments. And not, never do anything I say I'm going to do. For your own self-esteem and self-worth, follow through. Questions? Yes.
As it is said in Gita, that dispassion and practice are the two methods to control and harness the mind. Now my question is, as I practice and...
Rohan, maybe you can just help her with the mic. There you go.
Okay.
Perfect. Then everyone can hear you.
So my question is, how does one differentiate between dispassion and disinterest for the sake of, contemplation and practicing it?
Beautiful. So she mentioned these teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a scripture that guides us on how to live. And a lot of the teachings in the Gita are focused on what you could call equanimity. This sense of not going up and down. Being balanced, being the same in pain and pleasure, gain and loss, fame and lack of fame, all of the different dichotomies that we face. How to be the same. Doesn't mean that you don't notice. It doesn't mean that we've lost our ability to discriminate. It just means that I don't go up and down. It's not, today there's gain, I'm happy. Tomorrow there's loss, I'm miserable. Today there's success, I'm happy. Tomorrow there's failure, I'm miserable. Today there's pleasure, I'm happy. Tomorrow there's pain, I'm miserable. That instead of going up and down on those waves, that I'm able to have equanimity. And also that I'm able to not be so attached to my preferences. Because what causes most of us to go up and down is a sense of preference. This is what I love. This is what I really love. Oh, I hate that. But equanimity teaches us. Again, we notice differences, but in the same way that you could walk through a flower garden, seeing roses, seeing jasmine, seeing sunflowers, and you may certainly have a preference, but you're able to appreciate all of the different flowers. You're not wishing that one were like the other, or if you walk through a fruit orchard, you're not thinking, God, why are those bananas not juicy? Like, I just wish bananas could be juicy. I love juicy things. I hate bananas. That you understand, oranges are juicy, bananas are not. But that every fruit in and of itself is beautiful. Now, when you speak about disinterest and dispassion, so dispassion, the way that it's meant is, it's not that you don't have vibrancy. A lot of people mistakenly take these teachings of non-attachment, equanimity, dispassion, to mean that we are somehow living a very monotonous life, totally disconnected. I hear people sometimes say, oh, I've become very aloof. And I think that's not a quality that actually anybody should want to attain. You don't want to be aloof. You don't want to be artificially separate and disconnected from everything. And if you doubt this, think about the enlightened masters. Whichever ones you worship, whether they're in their bodies, whether they're no longer in their bodies, but just look at their lives and ask yourself, were they aloof? Were they monotonous? Were they disconnected and grumpy and boring? Of course not. They're the most vibrant beings. They're the most connected beings. They're the one whose eyes shine. I mean, you just spend 2 minutes in Pujya Swamiji's presence. He's right there. He's not disconnected. He's more present than anybody I've ever met because he's not so distracted. He's not aloof. Dispassion doesn't mean I've separated myself, I'm disconnected, I don't care. Yeah, let those people, those poor people die, no problem. Let the river be polluted, no problem. What it means is that I'm not hooked in to the things of the world. When you think of passion, right, we think of it as that which makes us very, very excited. Now, of course, there's a lot of different forms of passion, but every one of them is very anchored in that which is happening in the world, whether I'm passionate about my chocolate ice cream cone and how much I'm loving it, whether people are talking about passion in sensual or sexual experiences, whether they're passionate about the music they're listening to, passionate about the art that they're creating or seeing, passionate in a debate. It's all about that which is happening around me or that I'm involved in that moment. It's things of the senses. It's not that core, stable, still sense within us. And when we are taught to be dispassionate, what it means is not don't love an ice cream cone, don't enjoy a cup of hot tea, don't love a piece of music or art, but don't lose yourself. Don't come undone. Because if you come undone in that which you love passionately, well, then you're going to come undone in that which you don't love passionately. Then when all the things that you don't want to happen, that you're angry about, that you're frustrated about, well, then you're going to lose yourself in all of those as well. And so dispassion has to do really with, instead of being on the waves of an ocean going up and down, you've dived deeply into the depth of the ocean. So it's not get out of the ocean. It's not disconnect from the world, but it's dive so deeply that you're not being tossed around by the waves. And disinterest, again, you want to be not hooked into things. So for example, there's an election, or there's a sports game, or there's a sale of my favorite item, but there's only one item left and I rush to the store. It's going to be there or it's not, I don't know. In all of these things, we've got very clear interests, preferences, like who we want to win the election should win, who we want to win the sporting game should win. That item should definitely be there when I get there to buy it on sale. When we talk about disinterest, it means I'm not hooked into these things. Again, doesn't mean that I don't have a preference, doesn't mean I don't enjoy a sporting match. It just means I'm not going up and down. I'm not losing myself, my peace, my grounding. As the world keeps changing. But it doesn't mean that I'm disconnected. And that's the real subtlety of the teaching, is to be connected without being so enmeshed in outcomes that you lose that sense of self, that you lose your anchoring and grounding. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Good. Other questions? Yes, in the back. He's going to bring you a mic.
Good evening. It's all about this the word spirituality. I am a banker by profession. In 2020, I was posted in a very far-flung area from my home. It was 200 kilometers away from my family. I was feeling alone, and as you said, I followed a passion, the passion of meditation. When I started it, it was an amateur beginning. All the worldly thoughts which were not related, all the sins which I committed right from my age 5 to 30, they just flashed every time. Like for 45 minutes, odd minutes, it was just running like any Hollywood movie in front of my eyes. But after 1, 2, I think it's after 45 to 50 days, what I experienced that for only 15 seconds, maybe 50 seconds more, I just found myself in zero position. Like my whole body was not in position, like it was out of my control. I would literally feel myself in the space. That was the first experience. The second experience, which after which I never did meditation, to be very honest. It was 4 in the morning. I literally wake up at 4 in the morning when I started meditation. One fine day I was sleeping, not sleeping, but I was in a state of meditation. Suddenly what happens to my body, like, this is light, uh, if you multiply this light by 1 million or billion times, that light just uh, rose from back of my like body, and it just flashed here. And please trust me, it's the word which I'm telling you. I was not able to sleep for, I think, 1 month or so. It just touched there, and my I just felt like that, the crores and crores of, bulbs are, they are inside me. And after that, my body pained for more than 15 days. Every joint of my body pained for 15 days. I was sleeping. My daughter was sleeping in right with me. My missus was there. I saw myself standing. I saw myself. Please trust me. I saw myself standing in left of me, and that person was saying, "Daro mat, kuch nahi hoga." And that whole thing is a fraction of 15 or 20 seconds. After that, I never consulted anyone because I don't have any, gurus or something, because I was amateur. I was working outside the state. It was in far-flung areas, mountainous regions. So I never discussed with anybody, never ever. But this is true. What happened to me after that, I never did that because I didn't know what to do, what is life ahead of that. Because every time I wake up at 4 in the morning, my wife didn't like that. So it was so, I was in a state of confusion that I was not able to, tell her that through what stage I am going.
Sure, I understand.
I was thinking that she might think that, he's so young and he's talking about like this thing. So I was bit worried about my married life at that time. But no, she understands me, and she gives me the permission to, you know, uh,
Wonderful.
do what you want to do. So
Wonderful.
please guide me.
So first of all, you got the message. Daro mat. Kuch nahi hoga. Don't be afraid. Now, a lot of times when we start meditating, we have powerful experiences. Maybe not the very first day, but lots of people, because meditation is powerful. It connects us with the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is divine. And so connecting with that is deeply powerful. A lot of people have different powerful experiences in different ways, and being afraid of that is actually really common. I used to get afraid that I was going to stop breathing and die. Because for me, when you learn to meditate, you focus on the breath, and I did that. But then very soon I found that my breath seemed like it just stopped. And I remember going to Pujya Swamiji and saying, I can't meditate anymore because I'm going to die. And the benefit of having a guru is he said, essentially, Daro mat, kuch nahi hoga. Don't worry. Nobody's ever died meditating because they stopped breathing. You had a very, very powerful experience. A very powerful experience of energy rising in the body, of connecting with that divine energy. What you need now is a practice that teaches you how to work with that energy. A practice that teaches you how to harness that energy. Because what you had was 1 month of So much energy that you didn't sleep. Then 15 days of incredible pain and sleeping. And so the energy was there, but not in a way where you were able to harness it or channel it. You should start working with the different chakras, with the energy centers in the body. But when you meditate, try to stay simply aware. And that's always the very interesting thing, because when these things happen, whether it's that you feel like you're stopping breathing, whether it's light, whether it's energy, whether it's movement, whether it's some vision, whether it's some beautiful experience, what happens is we get lost in that. Because we love that, right? I mean, so we go into that and we lose the connection to the awareness and the consciousness. Because now I've gone off on that. So in the same way, whatever it is that arises in your meditation, whether it's a random thought, whether it's a craving for a bagel and cream cheese, or whether it's some divine experience, in all cases, don't let the mind now get fully pulled into just going off on that, but continue to stay anchored and grounded. And that would be really especially important for you. I mean, once you've worked with the energy for a long time, then you can go into whatever beautiful divine experiences arise. But in the beginning, when we don't have the ability to control those, let them happen. It'll happen. But you just stay anchored in the breath. It's a really powerful grounder. If you feel like the energy is too much, just re-anchor in your breath. As low in your abdomen as you can. It just immediately anchors and grounds you. But don't worry. Kuch nahi hoga. It's divine experiences, and now that your wife has so lovingly said that you can get up at 4 a.m. and do your practice, do it. Sit in meditation. Don't expect that that's going to happen again, because that's the other thing. We have one of those experiences once, and then every time we sit down, we're waiting for it to happen, and we're disappointed if it doesn't. We're now trying to grab in our meditation practice. So don't expect. Just be present. Just know that whatever arises in meditation is that which is supposed to arise. And your job is just to stay present, anchored, mindful, conscious as it happens. So, do you need a master? Do you need a guru? The timeless, evergreen question. In theory, all of the truth, God realization, self-realization, moksha, all of that is who we are. And so in theory, you don't need another person in order to connect you to God, to yourself. That's the theoretical. And that's true for a very, very small number of people who have been awakened spontaneously. For the vast, overwhelming majority of the rest of us, especially those of us who have any kind of identity stories that we struggle with, any kind of past that we struggle with, any kind of tendencies that we struggle with, any kind of mindset, mental patterns that we struggle with, or of course any kind of spiritual practice that we are struggling with. You need a guru. So you're right. You need a guru. But that just puts you into the same camp of all of the rest of us. It's not you need a guru just because you had this experience. For whatever people's experience has been, if you are looking to walk a path of light, of truth, well, you need someone who can help you access the light. Now, yes, the light is in you. It is you. It's the core of who you are. But the darkness of ignorance, of our habits, of our illusions, of our stories, of our past experiences, blocks us from seeing that light. And so the guru comes in and removes that darkness. So, yes, I'm in full agreement that you need a guru. Could you do it without one? Again, in theory, sure. In practice, probably not. But luckily your beautiful search has brought you all the way here. You're in the right place. Wonderful. Have a beautiful rest of your evenings, a beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And if you have a question that you feel shy to ask in public, feel free to write it down and bring it in advance. Give it to me as I come in. Just put it, whatever. It's a lot of ways. Get it to any member of our beautiful Seva team. Send it in by email. Send it by social media. And of course, if you don't feel shy, then just raise your hand and we'll take the rest of the questions tomorrow.